Wired 70-gram mice are dead in 2022, right? If that were true, then why would we see almost 70% of the pro circuit of highly competitive aim games like Valorant or Counter-Strike still using wired, heavier mice? Vaxee is one of the brands still putting out products that the pros reach for when they need to compete at the highest level. I've spent some time to see if they can improve performance for a boomer like me, or if by the end of my review I'll be firmly anti-vax.
Are you a healthy person? Like, look, don't do anything stupid, but you should...
Vaxee was formed around 2 years ago looking to build lifestyle and eSports products that they would be proud of. Their products have been collaborated on by former pro players and former Zowie designers to create products that feel familiar but unique to Vaxee. They currently offer 3 mice in their range, the NP-01, 01s and the Outset AX, and have one mousepad, the Vaxee PA. Starting with mice, let's look at what they all share before we look at what separates them. All the mice are priced at $65 or €70 and are available in a range of colours. More on that later. Vaxee don't use software for their settings, so all customization is done with buttons on the mouse and saved to the device. You can change features like poll rate, click debounce and DPI in 4 stages with dedicated buttons and an adjustable lift-off distance between 3 stages with button combinations. Each mouse uses a Pixart 3389 sensor which has a proven performance record and seems to be a fantastic implementation. The mouse skates are large, rounded PTFE and generally of a high quality, but I think Vaxee will be in charge by the micron from their supplier for thickness, as they're only available in 0.45 and 0.6mm options. With no extra skates offered in the box, if you are picking up a Vaxee mouse, I think the $4 is worth it to get an additional spare set, especially if you use a hard pad, as these skates will get chewed up pretty quickly. All of the mice use a 24-step optical scroll wheel which provides fantastic tactility and well-defined steps for use in game. Unfortunately, all that tactility does come with a cost, and your mouse will sound like a concerto of crickets chirping on a summer's evening when you're doom scrolling your Twitter timeline. The cord used is a combination of stiff at the point that it meets the stress relief and more flexible in the main body of the cable. It's really been designed to perform at its best in a mouse bungee, where the stiffer moulding helps keep the cord elevated off the surface of the pad. I think the best option I found was the Pulsar Micro bungee, which made all of the mice feel mostly wireless in-game. I actually also tried a high-quality paracord that I had on an extra NP-01s and found really no benefit, and in fact quite a negative effect. With the cable being so flexible, more of it dragged on the mousepad and created higher resistance. TLDR for Vaxee, save your money on a paracord, spend it on a bungee. But we'll get more into that as we go through each of the mice, kicking it off with the one that started it all, the NP-01. The NP-01 is what you get 9 months after prom if the Zowie S2 and EC2 had a few too many White Claws and got freaky in their parents' lakeside cabin. It looks generally symmetrical at first glance, but the EC2 influence is immediately apparent from the base and the rear flare. The dimensions on screen land the NP-01 in the mid-size range, but the 75-gram weight is perfectly distributed and not something I was ever really conscious of in-game, despite typically using mice that are in the 40 to 60-gram weight range. The dimensions and distribution of the shape made it feel most at home for me with 20 by 10 cm hands using a low tilt claw grip or flat fingertip grip, with palm being a grip that I can do but don't ever use competitively. The asymmetrical flares on the left and the right of the mouse are smart additions. In gameplay I noticed the bulge on the left side gave me a more stable and locked in claw. Additionally, the thumb indentation made the grip width significantly smaller and more comfortable for me, and the right side flare gave me a bulge to hook my pinky and ring finger onto. Also, every button was an absolute joy to press on this mouse, with no pre-travel, limited post-travel and extremely satisfying clicks using Huano 60G switches. There's no flex in the PCB, the mouse, the buttons, and all 4 units that I have here all have the same exceptional click feel. Vaxee are adding more colour options to their mice, and at the moment the NP-01 is available in standard gloss white, black matte and newly added full white and pink matte colours. Though sadly the pink doesn't have an Uwu Hello Kitty decal. I'm using the standard black and the main shell feels premium. I've had no issues with sweat, oil or finding my grip on the mouse. The clicks on the original black and white mice have a rougher satin finish, which I didn't enjoy as much. I found I did move a little more on these clicks when sweaty, and whilst the lack of comfort grooves give you more options and places to click the mouse, I found I missed the locked-in feel that you get from a mouse with deeper comfort grooves. In terms of gaming performance, no surprises that the mouse delivered everything that I wanted from it. The mouse size and shape was flexible enough to work on a whole range of games and never felt like it got in the way of my play. I also never noticed the weight or the cable being factors for me in gameplay, despite them being the most contested points on Vaxee mice. The only real objection or limitation I could see someone having for the NP-01 is the size if they have a smaller hand. Fortunately, for those people, Vaxee have a mouse that might be the answer. I ran a scientific poll on the community last week asking them what their favourite shape was, and the little man, the NP-01s, swung on its peers like Tyson Fury, getting 66% of the votes. Now, the S isn't a smaller mouse than the NP-01 exactly. It keeps the same length, but reduces almost every other dimension, making a thinner, lower mouse than the NP-01 that's easier to fingertip, or for smaller-handed people to grip altogether. The flatter top made a relaxed grip easier to pull off for me and gave me more room for fingertip micro adjustments. So the lower button height kept my aim feeling precise and fingertip led, and kind of reminded me of other mice like the MZ1 or the Final Mouse Starlight 12. Like its full-size counterpart, the NP-01 comes in a variety of colour options, and for this sample I had the full white edition. I was surprised at just how different the feel was on the full matte coating for the main click buttons. I felt they had much more grip and stability for me personally, and if you're looking for a finish that feels more closely aligned to other mice that you have, like the Logitech G Pro Wireless for example, the newer white and pink full matte finishes deliver this. Now, before using any of the mice as a mostly fingertip player, I kind of assumed that this would be the one that I'd be most comfortable and best performing with. It's 71 grams, so closer to the more mainstream lightweight trend in the core gamer space, and the grip width is also smaller and closer to other popular products like the Razer Viper Ultimate. And it is a ton of fun to use. It's small and agile enough to be useful on movement heavy games like Apex or Fortnite, whilst at the same time its EC2 influence works in an aggressive claw when managing spray patterns or initial shot accuracy in tac shooters. But of the three, this felt the most safe and the least Vaxee to me. Kind of reminded me of when an underground artist drops a more mainstream beat so they can fund their upcoming experimental project album. Don't get it twisted, the NP-01s is still a fantastic mouse, and if you've got small hands it might be the best option for you. It just isn't as unique feeling in the hand or has the personality of the NP-01, and certainly not of the most distinctively Vaxee shape of the bunch, the Outset AX. First thing to say about the AX is it settles the age-old debate, proving that girth is more important than length. Despite being shorter than the NP-01s, the height and width of the Outset AX make it feel a lot larger than the other mice in hand, really filling out the palm. If we think of the NP-01 as the illegitimate love child of the EC2, the Outset AX is its swole little brother that's fresh out of state penitentiary. It's available in the same three base colours as the other mice, but instead of pink, opts for a Best Buy yellow, which used to previously be exclusive to Counter-Strike Pro's iWoo. I started my time with the Outset AX trying to use my natural flat fingertip grip, but the mouse was having absolutely none of it. I think I needed altitude sickness pills with how high my fingers were on that mouse trying to make the grip work. I finally stopped being stubborn and realised that the aggressive, exaggerated curves and high side buttons really do need an aggressive tilt claw grip to get the most out of the mouse. So just like Fat Joe in 2004, I leaned back into the grip, and once I did, I had the biggest opinion whiplash I'd had on any mouse, going from unusable to probably my favourite Vaxee shape. The shorter, wider main clicks felt more tactile and snappier to actuate, and the scroll wheel, being more recessed to the shell, made it easier to roll off mouse 1 and use it with the side of my finger. I would say that my performance with the Outset was also the most dependent on the game that I was playing, with higher highs and lower lows. Fast-paced, high-movement shooters probably suffered the most with this shape, and whilst I was able to keep up, I always felt like I did it in spite of the mouse, rather than because of it. On the flip side, for tac shooters, where reaction speed and initial shot accuracy was more important, the Outset AX was a king. Using the Outset kind of reminded me of driving a Mustang or a muscle car. On wide open roads with gentle turns, you've got horsepower for days. Find yourself in a multi-storey car park and you're trading paint with the walls, just trying to get the thing round the corners. Despite this relative inflexibility in high movement shooters, for situations and games where I needed that initial accuracy and wanted controlled recoil, the Outset AX offers it in spades and has absolutely become my first choice for those titles. It just has so much personality in hand, and once I figured out my grip, I enjoyed every minute with it. And I kind of feel that's where Vaxee is at their absolute best, making shapes and products that are designed to do one thing and execute that thing better than anyone else. So how about the PA mousepad? What is it designed to do? With the Vaxee PA, the team looked at the Zowie GSR SE and had a "yo, can I copy your homework? Okay, but make it look different" moment. Memes aside, this pad is clearly inspired by the Zowie SE, but that isn't a bad thing, with almost a third of Counter-Strike pros still using a Zowie mousepad to compete. The PA comes in a variety of limited edition seasonal designs, but they all have the same surface and dimensions, with each costing $30 unless you want it personalised with your gamer tag or another word. I've had no issues with the size offered, finding it large enough to play any games making large swipes, but not so large as to overtake my entire desk. The PA shares the same 3.5mm thickness as the SE and an almost identical rubber backing, which lays flat out of the box almost immediately and doesn't move at all once down on the desk. It also doesn't have stitched edges, but I'm finding as I'm using more premium pads without them, it's kind of my preference on the forearm and also looks a lot cleaner on the desk. The pad does have a little bit more speed when using mice with smaller skates, so be aware if you're using mice like the Final Mouse or the G-Wolves Hearty S for example, it will be a faster pad. There are also supposedly glide differences in high and low humidity areas. I only was able to test it in a room with 35 to 40% humidity, and they felt pretty identical to me on a day-to-day basis. Now, despite all these obvious similarities, the PA isn't just an SE clone. It takes what makes the SE great and tweaks the formula to deliver a familiar, but in my opinion improved experience. There's some degree of static friction on both pads, but it's noticeably lower on the PA, which meant if I wasn't 100% accurate on my flick, and let's be honest I wasn't, micro adjustments were a little bit easier than they were on the SE. The smoother surface of the PA also seemed to have more kinetic friction than the SE. This meant that whilst the mouse started moving easier on the PA, it also was easier to stop, which helped me with my shot placement and accuracy. I introduced this pad asking the question, what's it intended to do? PA is an incredibly flexible surface. It's controlled but not muddy, fast but not speedy. I think rather than being intended to perform for a specific game or genre of game, the pad is designed instead to be consistent. The surface and base are a constant that I've been able to perform at my best with across a variety of scenarios. I think the PA pad is another example of what really defines Vaxee, and to quote Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, success isn't always about greatness. It's about consistency. Consistent hard work leads to success. What Vaxee does better than almost anyone else is make products that are expertly designed for their intended purpose. They're not the lightest, their mice are plastic, they don't have wireless, their skates don't use sapphires mined illegally by kids in the Congo, but I didn't care about any of that whatsoever when I was using their product, and my play wasn't any worse for it. Their mice are consistent precision tools that just never let me down. At the start we said that despite not following industry trends, pros are choosing to use Vaxee to compete, and I think it's this idea of consistency that probably best explains why. Earlier this week I asked the community what feature they wanted most from Vaxee and kind of expected to have another NP-01s style blowout for the wireless. Instead, the results are a surprising testament to just how many fans of their products don't really care about wireless or lightweight or flashy colours. They just want more mice from Vaxee, and I have to say, I agree with them. Cool, long video, but hopefully you found it useful and entertaining. Have you tried a Vaxee product? What did you think of it? Do any of their new range tempt you? Leave a comment down below and let me know. A like if you enjoyed my ramblings, and a sub if you want more Get Reviews in the future. Thanks again, and I will catch you in the next.